Welcome to Snyder's Inc., where the fun never ends. Reactions, gaming, and more with Josh as your friend. Tune in, buckle up, it's a ride you don't wanna miss. Snyder's Inc., let's dive in, feel the ultimate bliss.
Hello everybody, welcome to Snyder's Inc. And today, we've got another Spy Mysterious Unsolved Cases, Part 13. This one just has the title of The Spy in the Bag. Again, 5 Mysterious Unsolved Cases, Part 13. We will get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button, subscribe button, comment, stick down below. If you want to become a member, links in the description. Let's go!
On Monday, August 23, 2010, London resident Carrie Sub was worried about her brother. Gareth Williams was punctual and considerate, and he had uncharacteristically missed a meetup with Carrie the previous evening and remained unreachable. Around 11 a.m., she contacted his employers at the Secret Intelligence Service. The SIS, also known as MI6, is the equivalent of the United States Central Intelligence Agency. Gareth, a junior analyst for the Government Communications Headquarters, the British counterpart to the American National Security Agency, was on a 3-year temporary assignment with MI6, set to end in September. Around 4 p.m., MI6 called Scotland Yard. Officers were dispatched to his flat on Alderney Street in the upscale residential neighborhood of
Oh, I know this one! Oh, I know this case! I know about this one! Oh, I know about this one. This is the guy who gets found in the bag, right? They find the guy in the bag, and they can't figure out who did it because, like, there's no way he put himself in the bag, but there's no fingerprints anywhere, and the fucking heat was turned up, so he. Oh yeah, this case is fucked. This case is just fucked.
Pimlico, where they discovered a puzzling scene. Despite the summer temperatures, the heat in Gareth's apartment was turned up. There was no sign of forced entry, but as officers proceeded cautiously through the flat, a padlocked red sports bag was found inside the bathtub. Tragically, this contained the keys to the lock and Gareth's nude remains.
Gareth Williams, a brilliant mathematician who'd graduated at 17 and went on to work in GCHQ before being seconded to MI6. But in August 2010, he was found dead in his London flat in the most unusual of circumstances.
The initial investigation discovered traces of DNA, but not enough to form a profile. Furthermore, Gareth's DNA was not present on the outside of the bag, the padlock, or anywhere inside the tub. An iPhone was found at the home that had been reset to factory settings right around his estimated time of death, which was thought to be a week prior on August 16th. Though coroner Dr. Fiona Wilcox believed a third party was involved, Deputy Assistant Commissioner Martin Hewitt stated that Gareth was most probably by himself when he passed away. Unfortunately, the decomposition made it difficult to tell if poison or signs of a struggle were present, and there were no traces of alcohol or common recreational drugs in his system. In 2013, Scotland Yard concluded that Gareth likely locked himself in the bag, and that his death was a dreadful accident. Once inside, it would have only taken around 3 minutes for Gareth to suffocate. However, 2 experts attempted to recreate the scene and failed over 400 times.
I've tried hundreds of times to lock myself inside this bag and couldn't. Even Houdini would have struggled with this one. Someone else must have been involved.
Despite this,
That's the thing, there's no way he put himself in this bag. There's no way. It's not possible for him to have put himself in this bag, have no fingerprints on anything, and there's no way.
DAC Hewitt told the press that he was satisfied with the theoretical possibility that Gareth could have locked himself in the...
Look, I understand this sheriff, or whatever the hell his title is, deputy, he did not want to deal with MI6, so he's just letting this fucking go.
sports bag.
There are gaps in our understanding, and there are some pieces of evidence that tend you towards one theory more than another, and there are gaps that contradict that. What I'm saying is that in my view, after the further 2 years of investigation, I think it is more probable that Gareth was on his own at the time of his death.
However, many questions remain about the circumstances surrounding his death. An independent forensic review was conducted in January 2021, but this concluded in November 2023 with no further answers. In the absence of information, rumors have swirled surrounding the circumstances of the spy's death. As a codebreaker and skilled mathematician, some speculate that his demise may have been related to his work with the GCHQ and MI6. He was investigating Russian money laundering, and some, including former MP Norman Baker, believe he might have been the victim of a Russian hit that was then covered up by Britain's national security forces. Another hypothesis concerns Gareth's personal life. After his death, women's clothing and shoes were discovered at his residence, though he wasn't known to have a significant other or to wear clothing from different gender identities. Browser history revealed that Gareth occasionally visited bondage websites, but not frequently enough to indicate a fixation on the topic. A former landlady in Cheltenham also discovered that she and her husband once freed his hands from his bedposts after they heard him calling for help. Gareth told them he was just trying to see if he could get free, but the couple believed his predicament stemmed from personal gratification rather than professional experimentation. Ultimately, since Gareth was a very reserved person with few friends, there isn't much we can definitively say about his proclivities. Sadly, no answers appear to be on the horizon. The Williams family continues to support coroner Fiona Wilcox's initial impressions of the case. As their lawyer Anthony O'Toole noted, "We know that there was somebody in the flat. That is beyond dispute." On June 3, 2011, after completing her sophomore year at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana, 20-year-old Lauren Spearer was eager to enjoy a night out. Around 12:30 a.m., Lauren left her home at the Smallwood apartment complex with her friend David Rohn and headed to Jay Rosenbaum's residence at 5 North Townhomes. There, she met up with Jay and was introduced to his neighbor Corey Rossman and Corey's roommate Mike Beth. An hour later, David returned home while Lauren and Corey left for Kilroy's sports bar. Witnesses noted Lauren and Corey entering the bar at 1:46 a.m. and leaving at 2:27 a.m. By this time, Lauren was noticeably intoxicated and had abandoned her shoes and cell phone at Kilroy's. 3 minutes later, the pair were seen entering Lauren's apartment complex by a group of 4 male students who were friends with her longtime boyfriend, Jesse Wolfe. For some reason, the men started a fight with Corey, and he took a punch that knocked him to the ground. As FBI cold case agent Brad Garrett told ABC News, apparently, they don't like the way Rossman is handling Lauren. At this point, rather than proceed to her 5th floor dwelling, Lauren and Corey decide to return to his home. At 2:51 a.m., security cameras captured the two exiting an alley where Lauren's keys and purse were later found. Soon after, Lauren stumbled, and CCTV caught an image of Lauren slumped on the curb while Corey was speaking on the phone. It later came out through journalist Sean Cohen's investigation that the call was to a 17-year-old girl in his hometown of Sharon, Massachusetts. The young woman, Brooke Bowens, claims to have no memory of the phone conversation, but her mother told Sean that Corey warned Brooke to stay off the phone since the FBI might be tapping her line. Sometime around 3 a.m., they arrived at Corey's home where he promptly vomited. His roommate Mike, seeing that Lauren was also heavily intoxicated, tried to convince her to stay on their couch. According to him, Lauren was adamant about returning home, and at 3:30 a.m., Mike called his neighbor Jay and asked him to come and take care of her. She eventually returned to Jay's apartment and used his cell phone to call David Rohn and one other unnamed friend, but neither picked up. An hour later, at 4:30 a.m., Lauren left Jay's apartment, presumably to return home. She was last sighted by Jay on the corner of 11th Street and College Avenue, barefoot and wearing a white shirt and black leggings. Several hours later, her boyfriend Jesse, who'd spent the night at home, texted her. The pair had communicated throughout the night, but he went to bed around 2:30 a.m., right around the same time Lauren left the bar without her phone. His text was answered by a bar employee, and when he failed to locate Lauren by the afternoon, Jesse reported her missing. In the early days, the search for Lauren was thorough, involving cadaver dogs, civilian volunteers, and even the FBI. Unfortunately, there was nothing substantial to point to Lauren's whereabouts, and theories began to take shape. Some believe that Lauren was roofied at Kilroy's, accounting for her high level of impairment, but those close to her have intimated that Lauren voluntarily consumed recreational drugs. Jay told the police that he had witnessed her do so on the night in question. Additionally, in 2010, 9 months before she vanished, she was charged with public intoxication and illegal consumption.
Well, even if she was drugged. By the way it's described, she was wandering around for a good amount of hours, just being minding her own business. Like, if you're going by this thing, she was fine for 3 or 4 hours. Like, she was still, she was drunk, but it wasn't like she was unconscious.
Consumption, and a small amount of cocaine was recovered in her room during the police searches. Lauren also had a heart condition known as long QT syndrome. This causes an irregular heartbeat that can lead to sudden cardiac arrest and could heighten the danger of consuming illicit substances. Some speculate that Lauren overdosed that night and that her friends covered it up in a panic. David, Jay, Mike, Corey, and Jesse have all submitted DNA to the Bloomington police and passed private polygraph tests. However, the 5 men also refused to receive polygraphs from the local police department, and they have all retained legal representation. Corey also claims to have no further memories of the night after sustaining the punch at Lauren's apartment complex. Others have hypothesized that Lauren could have been snatched up by a stranger, but Lauren's family believes that the answers to their daughter's final hours lie closer to home. The Spearers filed a civil lawsuit against Jay, Mike, and Corey, accusing them of negligence.
I don't look. I don't know. I'm not in there. I'm not their thing. However, I will say, I think in any circumstances, letting a really heavily intoxicated drunk woman walk by herself home is just dangerous, and there is negligent. As you should be making sure you be like, no, you are sleeping here on the couch, and you are not leaving until I know you're safe. Until you're like woken up and you are sober.
But the suit was dismissed in 2014 by Judge Tanya Pratt. As she noted, unfortunately, there could be any number of theories. Without evidence to prove these, it would be impossible for a jury to determine if whatever happened to Lauren was a natural and probable consequence of her intoxication. At the time of her disappearance, Lauren had blonde hair and blue eyes. She was 4'11" and 95 pounds. If you have any information about her, please utilize the contact information on the screen. Just before the new year, in 2010, 27-year-old Michaela Hart married John McAvery in her hometown of Ballygawley, County Tyrone, Northern Ireland. After a beautiful wedding, the pair jetted off to the eastern African island of Mauritius, a tropical paradise in the Indian Ocean. The newlyweds checked into the Legends Hotel on the northern tip of the island and even received a room upgrade that placed the couple in the spacious room 1025. On January 10, 2011, the couple was about to have a cup of tea following their lunch at the hotel. Wanting something sweet with their drink, Michaela decided to return to their room to fetch a box of chocolates. She left around 2:44 p.m., promising to return soon. However, as more time ticked by, John became concerned. After 30 minutes, he settled the bill at the restaurant and returned to the room to check on Michaela. At the door of his suite, John realized he'd misplaced his keycard, and he knocked on the door. There was no answer, but he could hear the faint sound of running water. After returning to the front desk and securing a new key, he let himself in and followed the sound of the water to the suite's bathroom. There, he found his new bride's body floating in the tub. It took over an hour for Mauritian authorities to arrive at the hotel and secure the scene. During this time, many people traipsed in and out of the room, and Michaela's body was even moved from the tub, causing crucial evidence to be muddled or lost. Once police did arrive...
That's moronic. To me, once I would be closing that door, I'd be turn off the water, close the door, in my place, and I'm like, ain't no one allowed to fucking enter there until police show up. They're like, we run the hotel. I'm like, I'm telling you, you ain't fucking entering this place until police show up.
Their demeanor and handling of the case was unprofessional from the start, with one officer telling John, "What are you crying about? You're young, you'll get another wife." It appeared that...
Sorry. That is the most insane thing I've ever heard a police officer say. I have never heard a police officer so heartless in my life. That is amazing. He finds his new bride dead, and he's like, "What are you crying about? Get another one. I can hook you up with something if you're interested." Like, he's just... I've never heard that one. That's a whole new one. That's a new one for police for me. That's a whole new one.
that Michaela interrupted a robbery. Signs of a struggle in the room bolstered this theory, and authorities began to take a closer look at hotel employees who might have had access to master keycards. This led to the arrest of 3 men shortly after the crime: 2 cleaners, 32-year-old Avinash Tribhuwan and 33-year-old Raj Tikoy, and their supervisor, 42-year-old Sandeep Munea. Apparently, all 3 of these men had been using master keycards to gain access to the guests' rooms and steal from them. Avinash and Sandeep were charged with murder, while Raj faced a charge of conspiracy to murder.
I'm gonna assume the charges have been dropped, or they got not guilty if it's on this thing, because this seems very solved, but it isn't.
Avinash even confessed to the crime the day after his arrest, but later retracted the statement, arguing that his confession came under duress. A week after Michaela's murder, 2 security officers at the hotel, Dasen Narayan and Sinaren Mungu, were also arrested for conspiracy, but these 2 were later cleared. Raj Tikoy was eventually cleared as well, if he testified against Avinash and Sandeep in court. In May 2012, when the proceedings began, he shared his story. On the day of Michaela's slaying, Raj noted Avinash's cleaning cart outside her room at the time of her murder. He also overheard a woman crying out several times. Frightened, he hid in an adjacent room. Several moments later, he witnessed Avinash and Sandeep leaving the McAvery suite looking flustered. Unfortunately, there was no solid evidence to back up Raj's story. An expert from England tested both Michaela's body and the crime scene and found no evidence of either man's DNA. On July 12, 2012, after 8 weeks of trial, both men were found not guilty by the jury. Sadly, the initial investigation was so bungled that the jury deemed it impossible to reasonably convict the men in question. Avinash's supposed confession under duress and the lack of physical evidence tying the men to the crime led to an acquittal that left the McAvery and Hart families devastated. 3 years later, in August 2015, John McAvery successfully received a payout from the Legends Hotel, totaling £1.6 million. But there still seemed to be no further movement in the case. Finally, 6 years later, in June 2021, Michaela's death gained interest once more, and the Mauritian government pledged to reopen the investigation. Unfortunately, a few months later, the star witness from the first trial, Raj Tikoy, was found dead by his own hand. In 2022, Dasen Narayan, the hotel security guard, was arrested again for conspiracy to commit larceny. The keycard used to gain access to the McAvery's suite was one specifically coded to the hotel's security team, and on the morning of her death, this key had been swapped out for a dummy key bearing Dasen's DNA. He alleged that he had given the working keycard to Sandeep, but then later, like Avinash, retracted his statements, accusing the Mauritian police of using excessive force to coerce a confession. His charges were dropped. At the time of recording, there are no new answers, and justice has been denied for this bright young woman for far too long. As for the Legend Hotel, it has been rebranded as the Lux Grand Gaube, and the room where Michaela met her fateful end has been renumbered from 1025 to 1026.
For whatever reasons, people may be dubious about giving information. Perhaps they think it's too long, too much time has passed. There is never a late time for justice.
On the morning of Friday, March 19, 2004, 17-year-old Brianna Maitland finished the final exam needed to earn her GED. To celebrate, her mother Kelly took her daughter out for lunch and an afternoon of shopping. While standing in the line to check out at one of the stores, Brianna abruptly left her mother to go outside. When the pair reunited in the parking lot, Brianna's mood had shifted. She seemed agitated and shaky, but Kelly didn't want to upset her further, so she left the matter alone and took her daughter to the home in Sheldon, Vermont that Brianna was currently sharing with her friend, Jillian Stout. That evening, Brianna left a note for Jillian, stating that she would be back after her shift as a dishwasher at the Black Lantern Inn in Montgomery. After clocking out around 11:20 p.m., witnesses saw Brianna getting into her green 1985 Oldsmobile sedan and drive away alone. During the afternoon of the next day, a state trooper discovered a green Oldsmobile backed into the side of an abandoned structure known by locals as the Old Dutchburn House, about a mile from the Black Lantern Inn. The doors were unlocked. 2 uncashed paychecks with Brianna's name on them were found in the front seat, and change, a water bottle, and an unlit cigarette littered the ground beside the vehicle. The officer proceeded to the Black Lantern Inn to try and track down Brianna. But since the restaurant was closed and he received another call, he opted instead to have the car towed. When Jillian came back to her apartment after a weekend with her parents, she discovered Brianna's note untouched. After one day with no sign of her, Jillian called Kelly on Tuesday, March 23rd. Kelly was immediately worried, and after discovering no one had seen Brianna since Friday, she promptly filed a missing persons report. 2 days later, on Thursday, March 25th, Kelly and her husband Bruce went to the St. Albans Police Department to give them photos of their daughter. At this time, they discovered law enforcement had her car in custody and grew irritated. It was registered under Kelly's name, and they should have been notified as soon as the vehicle was found. But instead, it sat
That is weird. Why didn't police tell them that they found that their car was found? Why did they just leave it?
unclaimed in a local garage for days, wasting precious time. Several passing motorists recalled seeing the Oldsmobile at the old Dutchburn house between 11:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. the night Brianna vanished, but no one reported ever seeing a person or activity around the car. Whatever befell her unfolded very soon after she left her job. At first, Vermont police brushed Brianna off as a runaway. The young woman often expressed a desire to live elsewhere since she disliked her small rural hometown. At the time of her disappearance, she dropped out of high school in favor of a GED program and was living with her friend. Kelly insists that Brianna just desired additional freedom, and no tension led to this arrangement. The runaway scenario seemed unlikely. When the car was returned to the Maitlands, Bruce discovered her glasses, contact lens case, ATM.
Also, if she was a runaway, why wouldn't she take the paychecks that were for her? Why would she not? You would take the paychecks that has your money in it, because you would need the money to run away.
Card and migraine medication inside. Additionally, though her family relationships were solid, not all of her associations were harmonious. She had a recent altercation with a former friend 3 weeks before she vanished. Keely Lacrosse physically attacked Brianna while she was seated in a truck, and Brianna, though trained in jiu-jitsu, refused to fight back. Left with black eyes, a broken nose, and a concussion, she filed charges against Keely, which were set to go to court right around the time of her vanishing. With no Brianna, the case was dropped, which is, of course, convenient for Keely. Nevertheless, despite her hostile relationship with Brianna, she has been cleared of any involvement in her former friend's disappearance. As the months wore on, various tips trickled in that insinuated Brianna's involvement in the local drug scene had led to her demise. Friends noted that Brianna had begun to experiment with harder drugs, and she was an acquaintance of New York drug dealers Ramon Ryans and Nathaniel Jackson. An unnamed older woman claimed that Brianna was murdered by Ramon in an argument between the two after she lent him money for drugs. A friend of Brianna's, Katie Manning, told WPTZ News that she believes Brianna is dead because of some kind of money and drug mix-up. As she stated, she owed the wrong person money for the wrong thing. That person was in her car that night. 6 years later, the police revealed that they had a match to the DNA found in Brianna's car, but they provided no identity, only noting that the person in question was fully cooperating. On the 20th anniversary of her disappearance, the FBI announced a $400,000 reward for information regarding Brianna's case. She would now be in her late 30s. At the time of her disappearance, she was 5'4" and 105 pounds. She is a white female with brown hair and hazel eyes. If you have any information on Brianna's case, please contact the number on the screen.
This is 100% a case of, I kind of do wonder if it's drug-related. Like, I kind of do think it's drug-related. My gut is telling me that. Again, they've obviously told the information, but if it's a runaway, you're taking the paychecks with you. That's the thing that I'm clinging to that makes me go, it can't be a runaway. You take the paychecks, you would take the money, you would do whatever you can to get free, to have money with you when you run away. So that doesn't make sense to me. Her being involved with drugs is just a thing people deal with in the freaking when they're in the 20s and or teenagers. So it makes sense to me that she would get involved with drugs and again owe the wrong people money, and it just all goes wrong when they come to collect. I know all about this one. I'm letting this one go. I know all about these. These two are crazy. These two need help. These two need help.
On Friday, March 16, 2008, Swedish native Ursula Eriksson came to her twin sister Zabina's home in Ireland for a visit. At the time, Ursula lived in the United States, while Zabina was living with her husband and 2 children. At some point, Zabina and her husband got into an argument. Late that night, the twins abruptly left the home and boarded a ferry to Liverpool, England. After arriving around 8:30 a.m. on Saturday, May 17th, the sisters first went to the St. Anne Street police station and informed officers that Zabina's husband was abusive, and they were concerned for the safety of her children. Liverpool authorities contacted the police in Dublin, who were able to confirm that while the couple had argued the previous evening, there was no clear sign of abuse or danger to either Zabina or the children, based on the interviews conducted with her partner. 3 hours later, the twins boarded a bus to London. About an hour and a half.
Well, I would say you can't take your partner's word as proof that there is no abuse. A partner who's abusive is good at hiding their abuse, that they're abusive. I would say, though, your gut would tell you, usually. Unless you're really trying to not do the work. Most time your gut will tell you someone has dangerous motives.
Half into the ride, the driver noticed the sisters as they anxiously clutched their bags and looked around nervously. So he stopped the bus and requested to see the contents of their bags. When the pair refused, the driver kicked them off, leaving them at the Keighley Services Station.
Interesting. Okay, so I said I was gonna let this go. I lied, I guess. So he's sitting on the bus, and he's looking back, and he keeps seeing these two clutching their bags, looking around like they're about to do some shit. And he's like, no, what's in your bags? I need to know what's in your bags before I can let you go. And they're like, we're not letting you see our bags. And he's like, get the fuck off my bus then.
On the M6 motorway, about an hour northwest of Birmingham at 1 p.m. The manager of the service station witnessed the sisters' strange behavior as they exited the bus and called the police. Officers arrived and interviewed the sisters, but allowed them to continue on their way. CCTV next sighted the sisters walking down the median of the large, multi-lane M6 motorway. The speed limit on the M6 is around 70 miles per hour, so when the sisters suddenly surged out into oncoming traffic, drivers had little time to react. Zabina jumped into the road first and was struck by a car. Ursula followed but managed to avoid an accident. Despite being hit by a fast-moving vehicle, Zabina stood up as if nothing had happened. Police responded to the incident, intercepting the women where they stood on the shoulder. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Ursula wrenched herself free from the officers and careened back into traffic. She was struck and then dragged by a semi-truck. Zabina followed and was hit once more by another car.
Oh no! Bitch! Oh Jesus! Mike Alpha, we need ambulance. Senior officers to the scene. We've got 2 possible fatals.
Ursula's legs were crushed, while
I have never understood this. These two needed psychological help. There was something wrong with these two. You have to be messed up in the head to just run into traffic like this. These are not sane human beings.
Zabina remained unconscious for 15 minutes. But despite their injuries, and once Zabina regained consciousness, the pair remained violent and hostile. Ursula reportedly told officers restraining her, "I recognize you. I know you're not real." While Zabina cried out, "They're going to steal your organs." Zabina struck the officer holding her and raced across to the other side of the M6, and it ultimately took 6 people to restrain her. She was transported to a local hospital in an ambulance, while Ursula was taken via helicopter. It is unclear if they were brought to the same facility. At the hospital, Zabina was reportedly relaxed and jovial. No drugs or alcohol were present in her system, and she was released into police custody. She remained cooperative and spent the night in the local jail. On May 19th, after pleading guilty to trespassing on the motorway and hitting a police officer, she was sentenced to 1 day in jail and released into the nearby city of Stoke-on-Trent with time served. At no point was she given a psychiatric evaluation.
How? This woman needed help! This woman needs help! How was she not given one?
Around 7 p.m., 2 local men, Glenn Hollinshead and Peter Malloy, were out walking Glenn's dog when they noticed Zabina standing on the corner. After she complimented his dog, Zabina asked where the nearest bed and breakfast was, adding that she was also trying to locate her sister in the hospital. Glenn, being the friendly type, invited her to stay at his home instead. Additionally, his brother worked at a local hospital, so he noted that he could likely help her locate Ursula. Zabina accepted his generous offer and followed the men back to Glenn's house on Duke Street. As the night wore on, they witnessed a deterioration of Zabina's attitude. She became nervous and paranoid, frequently checking the windows without explanation. Peter was especially put off by her behavior and wondered if she was running away from an abusive partner. Around midnight, Peter left. The next evening at 7:40 p.m., Glenn's neighbor, Frank Booth, witnessed him stumbling out of his front door, covered in blood. He told Frank, "She stabbed me," and with his final breath, he asked him to look after his dog. Glenn passed away before the paramedics arrived. Zabina fled the scene and was spotted a short moment later by a motorist, Joshua Gradage, striking herself. Joshua leapt out of his car to assist, but Zabina produced a roof tile from her back pocket and hit him over the head. A stunned Joshua stepped back as Zabina ran once more, this time with paramedics on her heels. The chase ended when Zabina jumped from a 40-foot bridge into the A50, a major highway that runs through Stoke-on-Trent. The fall shattered both of her ankles and fractured her skull, so she returned to the hospital. Once released on September 11th, she was taken into custody and charged with Glenn's murder. 1 year later, Zabina pleaded guilty to manslaughter with diminished responsibility. She had violently stabbed Glenn 5 times, including once through the heart with one of his kitchen knives. Zabina never provided any reasoning or context for her actions. Both the prosecution and the defense agreed that Zabina was insane when the crime was committed, but that now she was sane once more. The defense posited that Zabina and Ursula had suffered from folie à deux, a mental condition that manifests as shared delusions or psychosis between two people. Other theories chalked Sabina's behavior up to other psychiatric disorders that caused hallucinations or delusions, but those don't explain Ursula's involvement in the M6 incident. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in prison, but she spent only 2 behind bars. Released in 2011, she returned to Sweden, and her current whereabouts are unknown. As for Ursula, after her recovery, she returned to the United States. There were plenty of opportunities for the Erickson sisters to be detained and kept away from the public. Their behavior was erratic, and they were a danger to both themselves and those around them. As Glenn's brother Gary noted, "We don't hold her responsible, the same as we wouldn't blame a rabid dog for biting someone. She is ill, and to a large degree not responsible for her actions, but her mental disorder should have been recognized much earlier."
Agreed.
Tell us your theories in the
Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this reaction video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.